On today's show, we have Gregory Molette joining us, and if you followed Fan's Favorite Fan for a long time, that's going to be a name that sounds familiar to you. He is one of our NBA writers, and today we're going to be talking some NBA hoops with him. Welcome back to the Fan Show. It is a kind of miserable Monday if you're listening. We are recording this on a Monday, and it's very overcast and just yucky out. I'm not really a fan of these type of days, but I'm Alex Berger, and this is the Fan Show. We are a podcast on fansfavoritefan.com, so be sure to check out the website once you're finished listening to this podcast. And like I said in the intro, we're going to have Gregory Molette on talking some NBA hoops and just talking about what the current state of the NBA looks like. And I'm going to get his opinion on a couple of things, especially talking about the local guys with the Atlanta Hawks and what's going on in that organization. But I first want to start off the show just talking some fan advice. When I thought about the show today and thought about how I was gonna do everything, the different type of segments that we were gonna roll into, I just had this thought that I was thinking about, and I didn't think it was fan advice, but I think it is fan advice, and so I just want to give you guys some fan advice if you are fans of the Atlanta Falcons. Now, what happened yesterday, like I said, we're recording this on a Monday, so yesterday was the NFC and AFC championships, and you might be thinking, why are you talking Atlanta Falcons when the Atlanta Falcons weren't in the NFC Championship, which they were last year, and they beat the Packers? That was probably the best Atlanta Falcons memory of inside the Georgia Dome that year. But, unfortunately weren't in one of these championship games. But at the same time, you have to feel a little bit better than you did last weekend, because I always try to look for the silver linings and things, trying to find the positive outcomes when things at first just don't seem that positive. And this Atlanta Falcons season isn't really a positive thing. It isn't something that you hang your hat on. Man, I hate to be Dan Quinn and trying to pretty much put a lipstick on a pig like he did last week in his press conference, and try to find the positive lining, the silver linings in this, because this was a team last year that went to a Super Bowl, and you thought with all the players, all the key players coming back, and especially that you had pretty young defense and they made it to the Super Bowl, well, they should repeat back. But unfortunately, I think a lot of people are going to label this season, and I don't see it this way, but I feel like the only way to describe it is that you had a hangover after your Super Bowl run. That 2017 was the hangover season, quote unquote. But trying to find a positive outcome to this was that you made the playoffs, you made it through the first round, and you lost to the Eagles. Now, I'm probably talking to the unrealistic Falcons fan right now, and if you're set up to have all your playoff games on the road, then you're not going to make it to the Super Bowl. That's just that's just the way it is. So knowing that there wasn't going to be any playoff games inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium this year, I knew the Falcons weren't going to make it to the Super Bowl. It's just the dumb luck that they had, and um, it was pretty clear during the season when they weren't going to make a Super Bowl run is when they lost to the Dolphins. But I'll come back to that. But I feel like the positive thing you can say though is since you lost to the Eagles, and now the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, they're going to play the team that you lost to in the Super Bowl and that you wanted to get revenge during the regular season this year, and it just didn't happen. So I guess you could say the positive thing about it was the team that beat you is in the Super Bowl. And it wasn't like they lost to Minnesota, which I really thought Minnesota was going to win that game. It was probably going to be a close game like they played the Saints, but I thought Minnesota could pull it out because they had a scary good defense, especially even though Case Keenum was a backup quarterback. I felt like he did really good for a guy coming out of Houston who was in a who was quote unquote system quarterback, which he was when you come out of those spread type of systems. But he did pretty good for taking over for Teddy Bridgewater. And but yeah, I thought it was going to be the Patriots in Minnesota, but it's the Patriots and the Eagles, which is kind of a throwback. Well, which is the same matchup you had back in 2005. So the positive thing to take away from this, if you're a Falcons fan, is that you just lost the team that's going to the Super Bowl. So there's nothing wrong with that, and I would feel a little bit better about that. And I would, knowing that I have a team right now that still has everything in place. You still have everything. You still have all the key players in place to make a run next year for the Super Bowl, barring any injuries to Matt Ryan, not Tevin Coleman, excuse me, Run Free, Mr. Friedman, or Julio Jones. I feel like those three guys have to stay healthy down the stretch for you to pull that off again. But like I said, you lost to the Dolphins. And that day when you couldn't convert on 3rd and 15, 3rd and 10 against the Dolphins, and you made Jay Cutler look like he was a veteran quarterback, yeah, that's where I felt like the season. Yeah, that's when I was pretty much like, Falcons aren't going to make a Super Bowl run. They'll probably make it to the playoffs, which you guys did, and you made it through the first round, and you lost in the second round, and now that team is going on to the Super Bowl. So it's a little bittersweet, but I feel like next year, if all the pieces are in place, and I don't think, because I feel like the Falcons right now, you don't have to make a big splash in the draft. You don't have to go all out in the draft with your first round pick. But I would like to see what they do in free agency. But I feel like the Falcons going into the 2018 season, that you guys are in good shape. But I also see, and I'm just telling you what I see and hear, and what I think, and my opinion of Falcons fans sometimes, especially when your team doesn't live up to expectations, and sometimes they're unrealistic expectations. I feel like Falcons fans can be a little bit abusive towards their teams and towards their team, and I especially felt like last year when the Falcons lost that just humiliating loss and letting the Patriots get back in it and ultimately winning the game, it seemed like the local media here just took the Falcons' head and was pretty much just smashing it on the pavement after taking that beating there, and which I get where the criticism comes from. I get that there needs to be criticism, but Falcons fans, just chill. But speaking of abusive relationships, and this is kind of like my first movie review that I'm doing, but I feel like it's somewhat applicable since this is a sports podcast, and this was somewhat of a sports movie. At least it had to deal with the Olympics back in the 1990s. I saw that movie I-Tonya, and if you're a guy right now and you're kind of wondering, I don't know if I really want to see that. That seems more like a chick film. Ice skating's more, well, it is a woman's sport, so I can see the peel back, and I can see that there's really not an interest in it, but definitely check this movie out. And if you're not sure really what the story of I-Tonya is, it is about Tonya Harding, and it's pretty much an autobiography type of movie, but it mainly highlights her skating career back in the 90s because she was into Olympics. She pulled off, she was the first American ice skater to pull off a triple axel, which is pretty impressive into itself, but the movie shows that there was a lot of just stuff going on behind the scenes, and she didn't come from the most glamorous upbringing, and there's just a lot of different abuse there, and it's pretty sad, to be honest with you, but I feel like every teenage guy should see that movie and go away with it. That's not how you treat women, and especially every teenage girl who's especially having problems with their mom. That movie will make you grateful for the mom that you had. But Marco Ruby playing Tonya Harding, I felt like she did an awesome job playing Tonya Harding, and I feel like she'll probably win Best Actress at the Academy Awards. And also Allison Jennings, her performance was really great. So if you're a guy, definitely check it out. It'll be well worth it. Now we're going to bring on Gregory to talk some NBA hoops. We just want to welcome to the fan show, and especially, like I said at the beginning of the show, if you've been following favorite fan for a long time, and this is going to be a name that sounds very familiar to you. We're having Gregory Molette on the show today. Gregory, how are you doing today, man?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on today. Very excited. First show.
No problem, man. We're talking some NBA hoops, and like I said, this show is being recorded on a Monday, and recently with breaking news, I know you guys are going to know more about this story with the more details that come out about it, but Jason Kidd has been let go of the Milwaukee Bucks being their head coach. So, Gregory, I just want to know, is this a good move by the Bucks, or is this a bad move?
I feel it's like a really great move for the Bucks because I feel like they're in a transition where I can never pronounce his name. I know everybody calls him like the Greek or something like that. I forgot how to pronounce his name. But I feel as though they're in a transition to try to contend with the Celtics and the Cavaliers and all of those great teams in the Eastern Conference. I feel as though this is the next step. And I think I have a good potential head coach that they should look into.
Who are you thinking about?
Thinking about Mark Jackson. I know he does a fine job as one of the sideline reporters and analysts, but I feel as though everybody, I think, wants him back as a head coach. Of course, not in Golden State, but he should fit right in Milwaukee.
Okay. Well, I guess now that John Gruden is the head coach of the Oakland Raiders, which I never thought I would see him back
Right.
coaching. It's kind of like, I guess anything really goes. And since this is the first time I've had you on the program and talking about the NBA, because you're one of our NBA writers here at Fan's Favorite Fan, something I've always been curious about with this year, do you think, because right now it's looking like the Celtics are the hot team in the East, but do you think that the Eastern Conference Final is going to be Celtics and Cavs, and do you think the Celtics can give them a run for their money?
I feel as though they're going to give them the best team that they can go against Eastern-wise. But I don't think that they're there yet. I feel like they're missing one key element, somebody like a DeAndre Jordan. I feel as though they need one more key element in their team to jump past the Cavaliers. I think it's been like, 3 or 4 finals in a row. Like, I feel as though they're one player away from jumping over that hurdle to get to the NBA Finals. So I feel as though they can potentially do it, but I just don't feel like they have the it factor to beat the Cavaliers, because that's what you need. Of course, with the Warriors, I feel as though they have their number for quite some time. I don't feel the Cavaliers are up to the potential or the task to beat the Warriors right now, but I feel as though the Cavaliers have what it takes, of course, to take the East one more time.
Mm-hmm. So, because I'm always wondering, because it seemed like there for a while that it was the Cavs and the Celtics when LeBron was at the Cavs the first time around, and then when he transitioned over to Miami, that it was pretty much Miami was gonna just steamroll everyone in the East till the finals, and they pretty much did that. So I'm just wondering, is the Celtics, are they going to give the Cavs their best shot, and could possibly, because I don't think the Celtics right now, if they were in a situation where they potentially beat the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals, that they would have enough forces to run with the Warriors.
I don't know, because, if you follow the playoffs, per se, you just know that's when everybody puts their A game on. And right. I don't feel as though Cavaliers are on their A game at all. They're nowhere near close to it right now. But I feel as though once the door closes and everybody knows the playoffs are here, I feel as though the Cavaliers will start to put it on. But I just don't feel like they have it to where they can be in the finals and beat the Warriors. They may beat the Celtics, 7 games maybe, but I feel as though if they're in a 7-game series, the longer the Celtics are in the series, the worse chance they have to beat the Cavaliers.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's interesting that you brought that up, because right now the Cavs are struggling. They don't look like they're up to championship caliber yet, but I remember the Lakers, when they had Kobe, when the Lakers were still relevant, they kind of had this January slump that they were in, but they turned it on that year. I can't specifically remember that year, but do you feel like the Cavs are kind of in that spot right now?
Well, the thing about the Lakers is they always have that little snake that always helped them. And I feel like LeBron can be that, but I don't think he's up to the task to take that big challenge. He always needs that one player to piggyback on to help him get there, because he's not that assassin scorer.
Right.
That's what Kobe did. But I feel as though LeBron has the all-around game. He doesn't have that assassin mentality as a Kobe, Michael, or even Steph Curry has right now. I feel as though they can get to what they need to get to, but I feel as though he always needs that one player to rely on to get there. And he has it right now in Isaiah Thomas, but they haven't played enough games to fill each other's game out. But as the season progresses until the playoffs, they might get it to click together. But as of right now, they have no shot of beating Harleys and the Celtics as of right now.
Isaiah Thomas, obviously he's having some struggles with Cleveland, and it doesn't look like he's the answer right now. And there are some trade rumors going on. And do you feel like getting rid of Isaiah is the right move for the Cavs, or do you feel like they should keep him on the team and just work out the things that they have going on with him?
I feel as though Isaiah is someone that the Cavs need down the stretch. I feel as though if the Cavs front office, if they can do whatever they can to get any kind of trade going on without Isaiah in it, that's their best bet. I've heard of Anthony Davis being up for grabs, but I also read from a beat writer from the Pelicans that they would, if I could remember, they would need the New England Patriots in order to trade Anthony Davis. So they're going to be looking for everything that you are willing to offer to give up Anthony Davis. But I feel as though somebody like that will send the Cavaliers over the hurdle to beat the Celtics and potentially even the Warriors as well.
Okay. I just want to talk about the other side in the Western Conference, because to me the Western Conference kind of reminds me of the SEC West, that you have your Alabama team. I'm talking about the SEC West a couple of years ago. It's like you have your Alabama team, which right now is the Golden State Warriors, and then you had you had teams like LSU and Arkansas and Auburn at one time a couple of years ago were sneaky good, and I feel it's the same way in the Western Conference, that you have a Houston team that can look like they can do some stuff. You also have a team in San Antonio that obviously is going through some things, but come playoff time, you really wonder what type of San Antonio team is going to come out there. And then there's always the Clippers, and the Clippers do just what the Clippers do. I don't really see them making a championship push, but I think they can still make some noise. So what's your take on the West?
The Wild Wild West.
Wild West, yep.
I feel as though it's open, but as the season progresses, that open door is just going to get closer. It's going to just close and close and close, because I feel like the Warriors have everybody's number. I mean, you got the Houston Rockets, who have done a fantastic job this offseason and this season by bringing in Chris Paul and putting him alongside James Harden. And I'm not a James Harden fan, but he can shoot. Now, that's a different story on defense. I think that's what he needs to work on. But I feel as though the Houston Rockets are going to give them the Warriors the worst headache, But you also have to look at Oklahoma City Thunder. They have Carmelo, Paul George, and Westbrook. I feel as though they're going to need a while to get it together if they plan on even staying together. But I feel as though those two teams are the teams that the Warriors are going to, of course, have to keep their eye on. The Celtics, I don't know what's going on with them, because as I think they actually reported this today, where Leonard is feeling some discomfort, or he's not feeling as confident of his rehab. The Spurs are actually asking him to do. We're going to watch that most definitely, see how that works out. But the Rockets and Oklahoma City are going to give the Warriors a headache this season.
Why do you think OKC is going to give the Warriors a headache? I can see the Rockets but yeah, why do you think OKC is going to be in that mix?
I mean, when you have a player like Russell Westbrook, who's always in the MVP race, and then you put him alongside Carmelo, who is very hungry to get that ring, like, ghost away from him, and then you add on like a player like Paul George. I just feel like that's a great combination to not knock off the Warriors, but get to the point where if you can keep all of those three players together long term, and you add, a Kemba Walker, because he's out there in trade talks now. You add a rookie that nobody knows about. You add somebody from overseas or something like that. If you add players along that team, you're going to get something out of it, because you can't put that's like half of an all-star starting lineup right there with Russell, Carmelo, and Paul George. It's half of an all-star team. So something is going to come out of that team. It's just they have to gel together, even though this is their first season together. And I don't even think, they played maybe the whole season together. They're going to jail just like LeBron, Wade, and Chris Bosh did in Miami. It might not be as well where they go 3-4 straight NBA finals, but they're going to give a West a headache that they've probably never seen before.
Interesting. If there's a wild card in the West, and which team would that be?
Good question. A wild card.
Just a team that you wouldn't expect could either give Golden State fits or possibly beat them possibly beat them down the stretch in April when you're really fighting for playoff seeding.
Other than the Rockets, I would probably say, now I want to say the Spurs, but I just feel as though Tony Parker's getting old, Mano's getting old. I'm going to have to go with the Timberwolves. And the reason why I say that is because right now I think they're like 3-4-ish in the standings, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Like that surprises me. I mean, and the only player that I can really think of is, of course, Andrew Wiggins, and I think is Levine. I don't think Levine's still there, but the only player that I really can remember on that team is Andrew Wiggins. Oh, and Jimmy Butler. Excuse me. So I just feel as though that team right there would be a wild card that nobody really could expect to make a playoff push past the first round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right now the Timberwolves are 30-18, so they've gotten off to a really good start to the season. But I just want to go back to the East real quick and talk about a team that's second right now in the East and trailing Boston by only 3 games, and that is that's Toronto. And Toronto always seems like that team year in and year out that no one's really paying attention to because it's Toronto, and when you think Toronto, you're probably thinking of the Maple Leafs and hockey, but
and Drake.
And Drake, yep. And I wasn't thinking Drake though, but yeah, Toronto is. You're not thinking basketball when you think Toronto, but they've made it pretty far in the playoffs. And do you think that they could push the Celtics like you're talking about? The Rockets could push Golden State?
I mean, if you put them in a regular season game, they might beat the Celtics. But a 7-game series, I don't feel as though they're going to beat the Celtics nor the Cavaliers for a 7-series game. Maybe like a usual a usual regular season game, they might beat them, you know. But for a 7-game series, I'd say about they maybe push it to 6 games at the most.
Mm-hmm. So, Gregory, I just want to get your prediction. Who do you see, and we'll put this in the vault, and I might play this back later, but who do you see as the 2 teams that are going to be in the conference, the finals during the summer, and how many games are they going to win by?
I'm going to go with the routine to last for 3 years.
The routine.
The routine 2 teams, the Warriors, of course, in the West, and the Cavaliers in the East. And I feel as though I'll go ahead and say it just because it's early. I feel as though the Warriors will sweep the Cavaliers. Now, the last 2 years, I think I was right with my predictions. So I'm just going to put that out there right there. The last 2 years, I have been correct with my predictions. And I think I have one on video. But this time, I'm going to go out on the limb and say, I believe the Warriors are going to sweep the Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron this year.
So
4 games.
4 games. So not a gentleman's sweep like they did last year, but a 4-game.
No. And there's a key factor why I say this because, of course, Warriors will have, well, I won't say they will, but they potentially might have home court advantage. That's for one, because I think if I'm looking at it right, as of right now, the Warriors are 37-10, and the Cavaliers are 27-18. So that's a whole, 8.5 games behind them. And I'm pretty sure the Warriors have probably beat them twice already, or at least once, if they haven't gone to hit their double head-to-head this year. So I feel as though the Warriors will have home court advantage, and they're going to take full advantage of that and sweep them.
Interesting. Well, since you think the Warriors are going to win, and that's a good prediction, which I would probably put money on that as well. And I think a lot of people that follow the NBA as closely as you do are probably going to have the same opinion. I don't know if 4 games just straight up. I don't think a lot of people would be saying that. But speaking of the Warriors, right now the Atlanta Hawks got the former Warriors GM Travis Shclenk and is now the GM with the Atlanta Hawks. And I just want to talk about these Hawks right now because right now they are dead last in the East. They only won 13 games this year so far, and it's pretty sad to see, especially that they, at this time of year, a couple of years ago, they were one of the best teams in the NBA. That it was them and the Warriors, and they had the better record than the Warriors at this time a couple of years ago. But now that the Warriors have a couple of finals rings, and the Hawks are still in that rut because they've had a lot of front office issues. And I just want to know from you, Gregory, is Travis Shclenk the answer for this organization?
It could potentially be the answer. I like the culture around the Hawks. I think they're one of the better teams, like organization-wise, especially with like their social media. They do a very great job with social media. But that also doesn't win games as well. You got to have talent. I feel as though, of course, with this new GM, they're going to get the best decisions made from trades, dealing, draft. I feel as though this is a great step for them to take. and hopefully bring in hopefully a big name, because that's what they're going to need. They're going to need somebody, at least one all-star, to send in a new all-star, and then hopefully get a great draft pick next year. So I feel as though they're on the right track, especially with somebody like Kent Bazemore. I love him. He's like a diamond in the rough. I feel as though he hasn't hit his potential. I feel like he's on a plateau. But him and, of course, Dennis Schroeder, those are the two elements that the Hawks need to keep. And everybody else, put them up on the trade block.
Yeah, it just seems like that this season is kind of like the implosion of the Georgia Dome, that right now you still have kind of some walls standing that you still need to get rid of. But, yeah, it seems like what you were talking about, that Travis Shclenk is on the right track. Do you feel that Coach Bud is the right coach? Because personally, I really like what Coach Bud brings to the table.
He did a great job when he first came on. That's when they started to really show their potential in the East. I feel as though you give him a few more seasons, maybe one or two, and if you haven't seen an improvement, especially with this season, if you don't see an improvement from here on, especially with the new GM, something needs to change culturally as for the Hawks. I feel as though that's the best decision that needs to be made. Coaching-wise, after 2 seasons, there hasn't been, at least next season, maybe the same kind of season, but that next season at least get into the playoffs. After that, yeah, you need to let somebody go coaching-wise.
If the trend still continues.
Right. If the trend still continues, where we're not even the trend if you're missing the playoffs. You don't have to be dead last and miss the playoffs. You can still miss the playoffs and get a little better. But from 2 years ago, you shouldn't go from 2-3 years ago to dead last. That's ridiculous.
Do you think he's going to get a pass this year, since it is a rebuilding year?
Yeah, most definitely. There's a leeway for improvement, especially with the Hawks and their roster. I mean, they really don't have nobody. But there's definitely room for improvement for next season. That's why I say give them 1 or 2 more seasons, especially next season. Next season is going to be key. Even though you might not make the playoffs, at least feel some improvement with roster and getting guys to gel together next season better than this season. If you can at least see that, and then the next season you might make it to the playoffs, maybe like an 8 seed or a 7 seed, at least go to the point where you see improvement in the roster and in players and coaching. If you can see that in this team, then I say keep them.
No, obviously, Golden State is just built a giant here in the NBA. But how many? Just lay out a timeline. How many years do you think it's going to take for the Hawks to be able to get back to the point where they can compete with the Warriors? Because at one time, like I was saying, that 1 year they were pretty much on the same level.
Yeah, I would give them a good maybe 3.5 years to start, really being a threat in the East. I mean, when you just implode all your team and then you send them to almost the same conference that you are in, I mean, these are the kind of results that you get.
Right. Absolutely. Do you feel like there's any, if you could find like some sort of optimism for the rest of this season for people to stay engaged with this team, like what would it be?
For the Hawks, I mean, they're a young, fun team to watch. That's a great way to start. I mean, they're young, so they're not going to be the best at decision making on the floor, but they can also be very entertaining to watch. So I feel as though they're very young. Kent Bazemore, he has a lot of hops. I mean, he's very fun to watch. Dennis Schroeder has he's like a Kyrie Irving with the handles. I mean, that's very fun to watch that. So they have those two talented players along with people like a Prince, and I took those two rookies. I forgot what those two rookies' names are, but they have talented players on the team. Just have to coach them and let them fill out their potential for the next few seasons to come, and hopefully they can get it together.
Mm-hmm. You talked about Dennis Schroeder, that keeping him is a key. Would you put, I know it's probably too early to put this on him, but would you try to keep him as like a franchise player?
I would for the moment until you can maybe find a franchise player that, you can come across. If you have to trade Dennis, you're going to have to, I would be like the Pelicans and be like, I need New England or at least the Philadelphia Eagles or something. I would need something. I feel as though I'm getting equal or even more for, unlike Kyrie Irving and Isaiah trade. That was just ridiculous. But I feel as though you're going to need something more. You feel like you're getting more on your plate rather than sending off one of your best players and you don't know what you're going to get.
Mm-hmm. That's what you need to do right now. Just do a lot of wheeling and dealing.
Mm-hmm.
But do you feel like the future is bright for the Atlanta Hawks, even though they're just in this crappy season right now?
Oh yeah, I definitely feel the future is bright. They have some amazing fans that are there every home game. They have that one little section that just, no matter what, they are always cheering and standing on their feet for the Atlanta Hawks. I love how they always, every now and then have some kind of performance. Unlike other cities, I feel as though the Atlanta Hawks have their own culture and in that city that could just potentially just get better and better with the right decision making from the front office.
Now, speaking of right decision making, do you think that they are, because they're having this terrible season, that they're trying to shoot to get the number one lottery pick?
I feel as though that is something that they could potentially shoot for, but it could also be like the Cavaliers, who always get the number one lottery pick and fall flat on their face most of the time. So that's not the best way to try to get a team to come from the bottom to the top. The best way possible for them is going to be trades and deals. I feel as though you might find someone in the lottery, but again, that goes to another young player having to develop his skills in the NBA, who might most likely, of course, will be a one and done. Don't get me started on that. And it's going to take a while for them to develop their skills for NBA potential game. So I feel as though the lottery is a good way, but it's not the best way from going from the bottom to potentially someone who's a threat in the East.
Mm-hmm. Because the reason why I bring that up is because Travis Shclenk has, the Golden State Warriors had a history of drafting Steph Curry and then developing his skill set. Do you think that they're going to try to go a similar route, or like you were saying, the best option right now on the table is to try to wheel and deal and try to get the best players out there too? And also too, do you think that they're also going to go the European route?
I would definitely go the European route. That is a great decision to make, but I feel as though also trading is the best as well, because with getting someone who's a rookie who doesn't understand a NBA game versus a college game. That's two totally different, levels of playing. I feel as though a European player could most definitely bring in a great offensive and even defensive perspective for that team.
Mm-hmm. Now we're about to go into basketball February because NFL is pretty much wrapped up, and you have Super Bowl first weekend in February, and then pretty much that is the only major sporting event out there is just basketball. It's NBA, college basketball. So what's something that you would say to a person like me to keep my interest in the NBA and what's going on? Because usually it gets pretty interesting once you get to the playoffs, but the playoffs are in late April, and we have like 3-4 months to go till that time. So what's one of the things that you would say that I should that could keep my interest on the NBA?
The best way is to jump on Twitter during game time. That is the most hilarious, funniest. I mean, there's all kind of laughs during tweeting while watching the game. That is very fun to tweet and watch every game, no matter if it's a college game, NBA game. You want to have some enjoyment while watching sports, I promise you, jumping on Twitter and make sure you follow Fans for Your Fan on Twitter. I promise you will get some enjoyment, maybe for a couple of hours, as long as the game is on. And even after the game is on, I'm pretty sure it's some kind of GIF or meme or watching the TNT analysts act a fool. That is the best way to enjoy your game between now and playoff time for the NBA and March Madness.
I never thought about that. I never thought about doing that. I do it for football, but I never thought about doing Twitter for the NBA. So I bet it's really entertaining. Well, I just want to say thank you, Gregory, for coming on this evening.
I appreciate it, but before I go, I have to talk about what today is.
Okay, go ahead.
12 years ago today was a very important moment in my life in NBA. Kobe Bryant scored 81 points today, 12 years ago. That was the most. Even though I didn't watch it, I'm very upset I didn't get to watch it because at that time I was a very depressed Lakers fan because they wasn't the Hawks, but they were in the mix of being the Hawks. But that was one of the most proudest days of my life of being a Laker and Kobe Bryant fan. He scored 81 points this day. Thank you, Kobe.
Well, there you go. Well, thank you, Gregory, for being on today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me, and thank you to Dawn.
I just want to thank Gregory for being on the show. He made a lot of interesting points about the NBA and what's going on in the NBA. And I know if you're an NBA fan and you've been listening to the show for a while, I know you've probably been waiting for it, and now you got it. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I just want to give a special thanks to you guys for listening to the show, and definitely appreciate you guys listening to us. And the show is on 2 different media platforms right now. You can listen to it on SoundCloud, or you can listen to it on our YouTube page. And we've got a lot of new viewers on the YouTube page. So if you're new and you saw the podcast on YouTube, you're awesome. Appreciate you checking us out. And if you're interested in the fan show and what we are all about, definitely check us out on SoundCloud. But if you're interested in supporting the fan show, because this show takes a lot of work, and right now we're looking to raise some capital to make this show better, to make this show more accessible around the World Wide Web and in the Atlanta area, but we need funding, and so if you want to, you can check out our GoFundMe page. I'll put that in the show description. Also, too, I have a personal Patreon account if you're into Patreon, or if you don't know what that is, I'll put that in the show description. But thank you guys again for listening. If you want to get into the conversation, the best way to do that is in the comment section, either on SoundCloud or YouTube, or you can tweet at me, and I'm going to put Gregory's Twitter handle in the show description, so be sure to check that. But my Twitter handle is Alexander71004. I know that's long. I'm going to change that sometime when I get around to it. But again, you guys are awesome, and I hope you have an amazing day.